Lael Wilcox is one of the best-known names in women's cycling. She's won or set records on countless ultra-endurance courses over the last 10 years. So many of you asked for Lael to come on the podcast, and I was so honored to get to sit down with her, talk about how she's going to try to set a 2024 around the world record for women's rallies, what it's like to be the recipient of so much online criticism, and much more. Lael, I super appreciate you being here today, and I'm sure most folks listening already know who you are. But if they've been living under a rock or they're new to the cycling world, could you maybe just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lael Wilcox. I'm originally from Anchorage, Alaska. Now live in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm an ultra endurance cyclist. So racing across the country. This year will be around the world, generally self-supported. So usually I'm out there for days or weeks, finding food, finding places to sleep, and trying to get to the finish line first.
So you just mentioned your big plan for 2024. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm super excited. So I'm going after the around the world record. And it's different than the racing I've done in the past because it's so super long. You have to make your own route, a minimum of 18,000 miles, heading either east or west. And then I think the one other rule is you have to cross two opposite sides of the globe. So for me, that'll be New Zealand and Spain. Yeah, so it's cool to kind of, my wife actually this week bought me a couple of globes, one kind of like hand size and the other one that's like 3 feet around, just so I can kind of look at it and start wrapping my head around like the bigger picture of it. You take commercial flights in between continents, so it's really a dream trip, something I've wanted to do since I raced across the US in 2016. At that time, I had this crazy dream that I'd race across the US, Pacific to Atlantic, and then that would be the start of my around the world ride. But I didn't have any money. I got myself a new passport, and that's about as much preparation as I'd done. So it's been on my mind since then. And last spring, I realized I was riding from Tucson, Arizona up to Banff to the start of the Tour Divide and realized that like the following summer, I had kind of a wide open schedule and I just loved being out on the bike so much every day that I was like, okay, next year I can go for this. I think I can make it happen. So I'm super excited. I start this May in Chicago.
Is there any, I mean, is it going to be different in terms of this is the longest race you've ever done, right? Will that change like your logistics or your daily schedule at all?
A little bit, because usually like the longest I've ever raced was across the US. That took 18 days. And I slept about 5 hours a night. And then the rest of the time was like trying to spend as much time riding as possible. So this will be similar, except it's so long that I think, I'll sleep 5 or 6 hours a night. And then just more kind of maintenance along the way. It's like that race, I got my bike serviced at the halfway point, basically. So then I will just have to do that, an additional, I don't know, 10 times. Which is so funny. It's like I have to
Yeah.
kind of like plan in like where I'm going to get a new chain and brake pads and tires. And then as I'm riding, I have to think, okay, I think I'll make it to like the end of this stretch in 5 days. So I better book a plane ticket. Um,
Oh, right.
I, you know, probably will stay in hotels, every 2 or 3 nights, because I have to charge stuff and I can
Yeah.
take a shower, get a good sleep. So it's like I have to be able to like maintain kind of uh this level for a lot longer, so that might take a bit more time in the day. So I've kind of put that into the equation to give myself a little grace room for like how many miles I think I can ride a day.
Mm-hmm.
So like for instance, during the Trans Am across the US, I averaged 237 miles a day for 18 days. But that was like towards the end, I won the race overall. And towards the end, I only slept like 6 hours over 3 nights to catch the guy. But this is like, well, I'm not going to be 3 nights out for like over 100 days. So I can't think about like cutting sleep or like minimizing stuff like that. So for this, my goal is 110 days, which means I have to average 163 miles a day. So I've got like an extra, like 50, 60 miles in there that I'm like, okay, I've got some room to, like, in case my bike breaks or I need to sleep a little bit more, or like I lose a little bit of time, because like there's you can only ride so fast for that long. A lot of it has to do with consistency.
Hmm.
So I realize I won't be quite as efficient for 3 months as I could be for 2 weeks.
Right.
So that's a bit of difference, and my body's just gonna break down more. It's just longer. So yeah, I have like a little bit of grace room, but also like the current women's record is 124 days. So I'm like, okay, I wanna beat that by 2 weeks.
Yeah. That's a
And
big,
that's
yeah.
like a huge goal for me, but I'm like, I like to set huge goals, and then I'm like, if I don't get it, whatever.
Yeah.
You gotta go for like the best you think you can do. And then if you don't get it, it's not like the biggest failure. It's just like you just kind of realize what was possible at that time.
Are there any areas or sections that make you nervous?
Mm, let's see. Not really. It's like there are areas that like make me excited because I've never been there. So like
Okay.
I'm riding across Turkey to Georgia, and I've always wanted to go to the country Georgia. They have mountains over 20,000 feet. It's just like kind of like an origin place. It has its own alphabet. They like started making bread and wine there. And I've just been super curious about this place for years and years, but never have gone. So I'm excited to go there. Um, and then I think from there, I'll go down and ride a bit in Southeast Asia. So probably Bangkok to Singapore. Um, I guess the things that are like kind of while I'm out there doing this stuff, usually it's like, oh, okay, I gotta, like, the logistical piece is tough. Like I have to find a bike box, pack my bike, get to the airport, make the flight, hope the bike makes it in one piece. So I think like a couple months ago, I was like waking up in the night thinking, oh man, what if like my bike breaks, or this kind
Yeah.
of stuff, because like it can happen.
Hmm.
And then you're like, ugh. But that also doesn't mean like game over. It just means like another thing to deal with. So
Will you be carrying more like spare parts with you than you would normally?
probably not.
Okay.
But I guess I'll just have to know where I can go. Because I could go to like a bike shop to get something fixed, but hopefully I'm not in a super remote area.
Hmm.
Um, because usually, like, the thing is, it's like you can still kind of ride a broken bike as long as you can keep air in your tires.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't ride great, but you can like get somewhere and then get it fixed, hopefully. So um, I guess, yeah, it's like you can't worry about all the things that could go wrong. Of course, it's gonna wake
Yeah.
me up in the night, but like day to day, you're like, I'm just riding my bike. It's fine.
Yeah. I love that positive attitude. Is Rue going along with you too? She's gonna be
She
filming?
is. Yep. So she'll be traveling in a car to shoot my ride,
Okay. That's
which is
probably logistically challenging too. That's,
more than
yeah,
biking.
I would think.
But that's not my job. She has to figure that part out. And I think for like Europe and Asia, she'll probably have someone with her to drive so she can focus on shooting.
Mhm.
And then Australia, New Zealand, North America, she might just be on her own doing it, because that's more like wide open roads and a bit easier in general.
So ultra endurance racing is this bit of a fringe sport, right? And I think within the mainstream bike world, we don't know a lot of ultra endurance cyclists, but
Mhm.
most people do know who Lael Wilcox is. Why do you think that is, and what do you think has kind of set you apart in that way?
Oh boy. I think I've been at it for, what are we, 2024? I've been at it for almost 10 years.
Okay.
Um, and originally it was like, I was like a woman that was winning, like I won the race across the US overall. Um, and then I started making videos about some of my rides. And honestly, that's been the thing I think that's like encouraged the most people to get out there and try it, because they see it. They
Hmm.
see a video, they see who I am. I'm like average height, average size, and I'm like doing these things that to me also seem impossible, and then they're like, oh, she can do that, I could give it a go.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe people like relate to me, and then they try something that scares them,
Yeah.
which is good, because I think the thing is, I don't want people to suffer or feel miserable, but like you've always got something inside you that's like, what if I tried that? What would that be like? And this excitement of like taking on something hard, and then like the like bad result is that you're too afraid to give it a go.
Yeah.
So like I'm kind of there like saying, just give it a go.
Yeah.
And then if you don't like it, don't do it again. Do something different. Don't worry about it. Like, don't worry about failure. Like the biggest failure is not to attempt something, because you're like,
Absolutely.
oh, I'm not strong enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not tough enough. And it's like, well, actually you are, especially women.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's what I've seen more is like, then I meet all these women and I meet them in person, and they're like, the fact that they show up in the first place to some of these rides is like, is awesome, but they're terrified. But then they do one or they do two and they're like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Right.
This is what I would do differently, but I'm capable.
Yep.
And I think that's to see that change is really cool. I've felt that way too. Or I've kind of felt like when people question me, then I get kind of like furious. And then I'm like, I have to prove it to them.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, are you gonna make it the whole way? Or do you know where you're going? Like, all these kind of doubtful questions that are just kind of rude.
Yeah.
It's like, well, would you say that to like a guy?
Right.
No, just because I look like little and nice doesn't mean like I can't do it.
Right.
There's a difference between like being kind and, I mean, like you can be kind and tough at the same time. So I think maybe, that's why people know who I am there. They like relate to
Yeah.
my story and they like it.
Yeah.
And this like extends outside of cycling, because it's like this is life too. It's like any like I'm like super passionate about spending time outside. But it's also like you can take this like mentality into work or into whatever thing like you're striving towards,
Yeah.
and then like just kind of give yourself a little room to try something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Little confidence, and maybe not knowing how it's going to go, and being okay with that.
You have been quite the lightning rod for like criticism and mean comments and controversy. Has that ever taken away some of your joy for biking or for doing this?
It doesn't take my joy away from biking, but it hurts.
Yeah.
It's like,
Absolutely.
especially like, I think people love like drama and controversy and rumors and all this stuff because it's fascinating.
Hmm.
And it's like when I like read a book or watch a movie, I'm like, of course, that's like what drives the movie.
Yeah.
Uh, but like to be the like there are people on either side of this, and people with feelings, and to be like kind of also to be accused of things that aren't true, that's tough. And then the thing is like that's also, I think, in the past 10 years, like the space of people kind of communicating or criticizing each other on the internet, it's grown. And I think people are really fast to like write something online, but they wouldn't say it to my face, which is kind of like, that's such a cowardly move.
Yeah. So probably just why
Or
in
like write
general.
me a message or ask to have a phone call, or, if you really have a problem, but then there's a difference between like trying to understand versus like trying to make somebody look bad.
Yeah.
But I think, for me, part of it is like just not reading, not going to those places where like people are really negative or, weird.
Hmm.
And trying to stick with the positive. But I think it's taken a couple years to like realize, because like you get like 99 positive comments, or like people or stories even where people are like uplifted and they go do something, and then you get one comment that's just rude, and it doesn't like, they don't balance each other out.
Hmm.
Like I think it's just human nature to like kind of go towards the negative, and like let that like chip away at you instead of like letting the positive build you up, which
Yeah.
is unfortunate. And I like I recognized it myself too, but then I'm like, at some point you just have to let it I just have to let it go.
Yeah.
'Cause I think that's also like the more exposure you get, the more that's going to happen. There's just like a wider audience, and like some people are not in a good place.
Yeah, isn't that true?
You know,
Good
and
on
like
them. Yep.
it's also like I don't want them to feel bad either, even if they're mean to me. I still want them to feel good about themselves. And I'm like, well, I would never do that, but like, of course not.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't like hold other people to your own standards. So that's just something I kind of have to live with. Uh, and I'm fine with it at this point. I'm like, well, not everybody's going to be happy, and that's okay.
Yeah. Do you think some of it too, like a lot of it seems to be criticism coming from men? Do you think some of it is gatekeeping? I know that like the ultra endurance community is very elitist, like they want to feel like not just any woman could come in and do this. Do you think that
Well,
gatekeeping is kind of part of it?
I think a lot of it is extremely sexist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also like the more hurtful is like some of that's from women too.
Yep.
And then I'm like, oh, that's even worse. Like that's the stuff that kind of turns my stomach because I'm like, oh, there's so few of us in the first place. Why can't we like either let each other be or lift each other up,
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, bummer. But I do think that because I see like examples of men doing things that are very similar to me, like having, their brothers shoot videos about them and setting records and doing all this stuff, and nobody questions what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, how is that different?
Yeah.
But, then I see it, but I'm also like, then I go back to like, well, instead of like accusing somebody else or like raising concern about something that I think is not good. Like I feel like people should be able to share stories. So the controversy is like making videos basically.
Yeah.
Uh I I guess I don't want to like tear them down. So I'm like, okay, just let it go. But I see, when you see these like inconsistencies, you're like, oh man, so the reason they're tearing me down is because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
God, like of the like 10% of the riders in this sport that are women, it's like you have to like go after them too. Like the whole point for me of making these videos is like encourage more people, all kinds of people, but especially women to like give it a go. And then it's like, and then they see like the one woman who's doing well get attacked,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, that's too bad. But I don't know. I don't really know how to deal with that, but I don't think the solution is to like add more negativity to the scene because
Are
I'm
there
like,
women out are there women out there that have lifted you up, and are there women out there
oh,
that
of
you look up
course.
to? Yeah.
Definitely, like so many, and so many that inspire me. And they're like, I'm a mom, I have like 4 kids, and I make time to do this. And, it's so cool. So, yeah. And it also like reminds me like of like direct human interaction, going for rides with people and hearing their stories, or like spending a week like doing a bike packing trip together. That really like that actually changes things, and that changes people's lives, and it's like that's huge, like for one person to like have that kind of transformation over a week and then become like a leader in their own community, or like start a podcast or start a women's riding group, or you know just go on more trips and invite their friends along. Like that's actually what changes the culture in such a huge way. So I do organize like women's bike packing rallies. We've done 6 of them over 3 years. I have a call later today to schedule for 2024, and I'm like, that's really cool. So yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about those rallies?
Yeah, so we ride like a 400-mile route over 8 days in the mountains. So we've done 5 of them in Europe. The first one in the US was this past November out of Tucson, where I live. And we usually have a group of like 50 to 70 women of all ages. So our youngest riders, I think we've probably had like a 19-year-old, oldest 70.
Cool.
So it's so cool. And
Yeah.
then it's just a route, a start time. We have like a pre-dinner or pre-ride dinner, and then a finisher's party. And then the rest of the way, you kind of decide like how far you want to go each day, where you want to sleep, who you want to ride with. And it's cool because it kind of like naturally people form small groups, make new friends. And then, it's like everybody's scared at the start, and then it's just like a huge deal to get to the end.
Yeah.
And it's not a race, so it's like you could ride any pace, and it's, yeah, there's no competition about it. It's just like to be out there. So, yeah, it's been really cool to see. The first year, I think we had like 21, and then this past year we hosted 3 rallies. The second was in Slovenia, and there were over 1,600 women that applied to be in
Oh,
it.
wow.
So it was just like that. I mean, those numbers, that was huge just to see like this many women want to do this kind of
Yeah.
thing, can take a week off of the rest of their life to make it happen, travel there. So it's cool to see like that growth of like the spirit of it. But we keep the group kind of smaller because a lot of these places are pretty remote. It'd be kind of taxing on the small towns we go through if you had, 1,600 women riding.
Yes.
Even 50 or 60, they're like, wow,
Right.
who are all these women? Because like
Yeah,
you think about it, like you rarely see women out there.
that's right.
When I see a woman like biking, I had this experience once where I was like riding the Arizona Trail, cross paths with another woman, and I was like, wow, I can't believe she's out here.
Right.
Yeah, and then I like thought about it, and I was like, that's like me. But it's like if you never see it, it's like this kind of like it's just like this mentally kind of wild thing, like, oh wow, cool.
Yes. I'm part of
It's
a women's bikepacking group in Idaho, and we'll go out, and there'll
mhm.
be like 20 or 30 of us, and we show up in these tiny little towns, and people's minds are actually blown. They're like, "What? Where are you going? Where did you
Yeah,
come from?"
it's like this so exciting,
Yeah.
it's like exciting for these people at the gas station. They're like, oh my gosh, like a group of women, it's just like so unusual,
Right.
so that's so cool,
It's really funny. What advice would you have for a woman if she's listening and she's interested in bike pack racing? Um, yeah, what tips or advice would
oh
you have for
yeah,
her?
totally. I guess it kind of depends on like the your level of experience, but if you haven't gone out, go for an overnight to start, like pick somewhere from home, make a destination, sleep out, and then come back. That's one way to do it, to just like gain some confidence and figure out where to pack stuff. Because there's so many little pieces to it. It's like, what do you need? Where do you put it on the bike? How do you navigate? Where are you gonna go? Like there are all these like different elements that can make it seem like too much.
Yeah,
So it's if you start with like an easy one, then you're like, okay, I got that. What's next? Uh, I mean, and then I guess the next step is like picking a route that inspires you. You're like, I really want to go there. I want to see this. Or you've already done it and you're like, this would be so cool to race. And then kind of like going from there. I think so much of it is like your desire to be out there, that keeps you going because it's hard.
yeah,
It hurts,
yeah,
so it's like you might as well like kind of shoot for the moon and pick something cool. Because that'll keep you going. That keeps me going when I like look around. I'm like, this is so beautiful. And then I've done like, this is rare. Most of the time I'm like, this is incredibly beautiful, but a few routes where I'm like, this is not my
mm,
thing. And then it makes it even mentally harder to be out
yeah,
there when you're like, I don't like this. Why did I decide to do this? Because
yeah,
like you're gonna have those internal questions anyway, like why am I doing this? But especially like the beauty kind of has to match your own effort, I
yeah.
think.
So much of these events is mental. Do you think you
Yeah.
are just like naturally very mentally tough, or have you done things like over time to build your mental toughness?
I think I've gotten tougher because I think your spectrum of dealing with discomfort grows in these things where it's like, the first time you get so cold and you're like, I'm never gonna get warm again. And then you're like, oh, the next time you're like, oh, I've been here before.
Mm-hmm.
I know what this is like. Um, so I think I've gotten tougher, or I've gotten like less like I don't care as much.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm in a lot of pain, but that's fine. Like it doesn't make me like kind of freak out as much,
yeah,
because I think your body has kind of a memory for this stuff too. Like your joints and your hands and your feet, you're like, oh yeah, we've been here before.
yeah,
So I think that's kind of like it grows. Yeah, but I think I've always been like super driven, so that's been like since I was a kid, like very like almost like too hard on myself, and maybe now I'm not as hard on myself, but I put myself in worse situations.
Yeah.
So yeah,
How do you ride so many miles and not get burnt out?
I have gotten burnt out for sure. But I think that tolerance like goes up too. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, well, why do I keep coming back to it? You know, because when I started racing, it was like so new and exciting. I was like, oh, I want to see how far I can go and what I can do. And then like now I've kind of done that. So it's like I've come to a realization that I just really love being out there. You know, it's like a great place to think and see beautiful things. And like the memories are so full. You know, it's like those days are like weeks. And I'm like, wow, that was so exciting. So it keeps me coming back. But then I'm like, I'm back in it. I'm like, oh yeah, this really hurts. And I think that's probably a good thing is like I kind of like have a short-term memory for the pain. Um, where I'm like, you know, it's kind of like when you're around like a ton of mosquitoes and it's like the worst experience. And then like, you know, months later you like forget that it could be that bad.
Yeah. What about the health piece? Do you ever feel like there's a point like with sleep deprivation or pushing yourself
Oh
too
yeah.
far that this like maybe isn't the healthiest thing for your
It's
body?
definitely not healthy. You know, I mean, like riding your bike and being out, that's healthy, but
Right.
like pushing yourself that far is not healthy, or
Okay.
like having to
Mm.
eat all this junk food's not healthy. The sleep deprivation is probably the worst part about it.
Yeah.
Um,
But you
but
do
you know,
sleep. You do sleep. You're not one to like push through the night, right?
generally not, but like some of the races, it's like you kind of have to, like
Mm-hmm.
anything that's like 2 days or shorter, like
Mm-hmm.
2 nights or shorter,
Yep.
nobody sleeps. You know, and it's like, well, it's not good not to sleep for 2 nights in a row, but that's kind of what you have to do.
Right.
Then I realized that and I was like, well, then I want to ride the stuff that's like takes a week because you have to sleep. But you know, some of these people are like pushing it where they only sleep like every third night or
Yeah, it's wild.
horrible.
Yeah.
You know, oh, but then I guess the thing is I'm like, well, what's actually gonna get me to the finish line fastest? And usually that's like at least a bit of sleep.
Yeah.
Because your body just starts kind of shutting down, like your guts are all messed up, you're like weird in the head, you're making bad choices, you know, like everything hurts more if you never get off the bike. So I do think like in some of that you take an hour or two off the bike and sleep, then you could ride faster and make up the time. It's that kind of a game though, you know, where it's like, can I make up the time or not?
Yeah. From women, one of the biggest concerns or questions I hear all the time is just like worrying about your butt sitting on a bike for
Oh
that long.
yeah.
Yeah, do you have any, I guess, like advice on that, or how have you
Oh
dealt with
gosh, I
that?
feel like that's so like different for different people, but
Yep.
my solution is I don't use a chamois.
Yep.
And then I have like a really comfortable saddle and I stand up a lot. So I think like moving around on the bike helps a lot. Um, but then I think it's the kind of thing where you just keep looking for solutions until you find something that works.
Yeah.
You know, like don't settle for something that's awful. So like keep trying different shorts, different saddles, different positions until you figure it out. And then I think there's also like part of it is just how much time you spend riding, building up to something big.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's got to help. But yeah, that's horrible. You know, and I guess I'm feel really lucky that I don't deal with like problems with that.
I'd read that you actually cut the chamois out of your shorts. Is that what you
I
still do?
do.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I do. So I like bibs because I
Mm-hmm.
like the shoulder straps better than like a waist strap, but I
Yeah.
just cut the chamois out.
Yep. I actually, you inspired me to try that because I don't like to ride with a chamois either, but like I also don't like to wear like underwear under baggies or anything. So it
Yeah.
finally occurred to me when I read that I could just cut out the chamois. I thought that was very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and did you like it?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, especially for like something like bike packing where it's like day after day and
Yep.
you're like, oh, the chamois is like really dirty. You can't wash it out and like get it fully dry.
Yep.
So you're like, oh, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
You know, so
Perfect solution.
cool. Yeah.
um, I've got three final questions for you, but before I ask those, where can folks come follow along with you? And do you have any sponsors or anything you'd like to give a shout out to?
Oh, sure. So follow along. I've got a bunch of videos up on YouTube that are free if you just search my name. Let's see, Instagram, my name, and uh man, I'm so lucky I get to do this as a job. I can't believe it. I rode and paid for over 10 years, and then in 2018 started getting sponsored with to be able to do this full time. And it stayed the same. I'm sponsored by Specialized and Wahoo and Rafa. And yeah, I'm just super grateful for that. But yeah, what else for around the world? I'll have some kind of tracking page up. So my hope is that people come out and ride with me.
Okay.
Because now I have my route for North America kind of locked, and so you could like find where I am and then just pop out for a few miles. So that would be, I think being out there for 3 months, having different people come out and ride stretches, I think will be such a cool way to do it. So
Yeah, love that. First question for you is, what bike or bikes do you ride?
yeah, so man, so I'm going up to Alaska next week. So I'll be getting on a fat bike up there for about 5 weeks to get ready for the Iditarod. And that's a Corvus, it's a local Alaskan bike. And I've been in Arizona, it's super sunny and nice, and up there it's so cold and snowy. So I have to go to acclimate for the race at the end of February. Otherwise, lately I've been mostly riding road and mountain, ride Specialized. And I just love mixing it up, because it's like I like riding long miles all the time, but it's like if I'm sometimes it's nice to ride trail, and then riding road is just so easy.
Mm.
So yeah. So all kinds. No downhill stuff for me. I'm more of an uphill rider.
We all have to have something that we specialize in. Second question is, where's your favorite place you've ever ridden your bike?
Ooh. Oh, there's so many good ones. Yeah, I'm from Alaska. I love riding up there. It just looks so different. Uh, let's see. Last year we did a rally in the Canary Islands, kind of off the coast of Africa, and it was like Jurassic Park.
Mm.
Each island looked totally different, volcanic, some were black, some were green. That was so cool. Connected the islands up with ferries. I loved that. Um, yeah, anywhere with mountains really. I love riding in Switzerland and Italy,
Mm.
because also it's like super beautiful and the food's so good. So it's like these memories are kind of like combinations. Riding across Kyrgyzstan was incredibly beautiful. I think anywhere where it gets like kind of like alpine, and you have these like huge views, that's kind of where I'm probably happiest.
And who knows, if I asked you this question next year after you're around the world, you might have
Yeah.
totally different answers.
Yeah, totally.
Final question is, what do you love most about riding your bike?
Mm, man, what do I love most about it? I think the most exciting moments are the starts,
Mm-hmm.
like that first kind of pedal stroke when you're just like from inside to outside or out of your tent going for the first mile. There's something about that feeling of like that transition of like having kind of wind go past you and you're like, I'm doing this. Um, I love that. And then I mean, of course, riding at the most beautiful times of day, sunrise, sunset, where everything just looks so incredible, or like riding from the dark into a sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's just, and I think it almost feels like stolen time, like time where you would be sleeping or you would be doing something else. And like, you're just so lucky to be able to see those moments. So that's cool.